Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. All right, folks, it's Big Paul here today. Back with another anabolic Q&A. Apologize that I didn't get one up last week. I got my nuts kicked in by the virus that we cannot name on social media. We all know what virus I'm talking about. But last week sucked. I had a 104-degree temperature for almost 2 days straight. Ended up having the rigors terribly. I've never experienced such a thing in my life. It was almost like I was having convulsions. I couldn't stand up, couldn't do anything. It was nuts. I'm feeling a little bit better now. I'm running my mitochondrial stack, getting some antioxidants in, glutathione, a whole cocktail of stuff to get my immune system running, fighting this thing off. Feeling a lot better now, back in business. Hopefully I can get back into the gym today. I've been out for a week. Anyway, enough about me. I've got some good questions today from my Team Anabolic Bodybuilding members site on School. It's $30 a month. It's super cheap if you want to sign up and check it out. Members get first priority on questions for these Q&As, so I put their questions up. I've got some good ones for you here today from the School members site. Got a question on using Tren at 65 years old for contest prep. I've got a question here about positive nitrogen balance. What does that actually mean for bodybuilding purposes? What labs are great to run while you are on cycle? And how to effectively use HGH for fat burning while on contest prep. I got some other questions in here too. We're going to dig into all these in just 1 second. All right, first question up here from Scott Brinkman from the School Team Anabolic Bodybuilding Members Community. Scott asked, what would be an alternative to using Trenbolone on contest prep this season? I don't think the results are worth the risk at age 65, and I like to compete as long as I can. Yeah, I mean, 65 years old. Let's be honest, we shouldn't be probably running Tren. If you were going to, I would just microdose it, take very small doses. Vigorous Steve has some great videos up about microdosing Tren. I personally did not use it last year on my contest prep for Masters Nationals where I won my pro card. I did just fine without it. I was running a hell of a lot of gear, that is for sure, but I didn't use Tren. I started it. I got about a week into it, and I felt like dog shit. I couldn't sleep. I was getting anxious, and I'm like, this just isn't worth it. I don't really care. So I dropped the Tren, and I just ran, for the most part, last year on my contest prep, testosterone, and then a combination of Masteron and Primobolan, and I think I got great results. I even held the orals until really the last 2 weeks, where I ran Winstrol going into the last 2 weeks when I dropped my injectables. I ran higher doses of Winstrol, which worked out really great. I kept everything just to basic safer compounds, and I think if you run those safer compounds, you can be a little more aggressive with dosing and end up with better results at the end. If you're sick, if you don't feel good, if you're not sleeping, you're not going to look good on stage, especially at our age. When you're in your 20s, you can get away with some of that shit, and you know, you can burn the candle at both ends. Crap, I remember being in college, I would go out drinking, do all kinds of stupid stuff, sleep 3 hours, get up, take some D-ball, work out, and look fantastic. If I did that shit now, I'd end up in the hospital. I would not hold up well. I would not look great. So we have to be very conscious of our health, especially as masters competitors. I think that is a big thing that you have to learn to manage as a masters competitor in bodybuilding. I'd say once you get past the age of 40, 45, you really have to think about managing fatigue, preventing injuries. You have to think about how PEDs play into that, how they affect you, both physically and emotionally. Like I said, if you're sick, if you can't train hard, if you don't feel good, if you're not sleeping, if your body's not optimized, if your blood panels suck, you're just not going to look good on stage. I see tons of guys that get up there that throw the hammer down, push the gas pedal down, and they just end up looking bad. Even younger guys, sometimes I'll see it where they just don't manage things appropriately and they look like dog crap when they get up on stage. So, no, you don't need it. I would just stick with the basics. Honestly, I think kind of an old guy approved cycle, simple, easy one for contest prep would be just test, Masteron, and some Anavar, growth hormone. That's it. That's all you need. Save the Anavar for the end. If you wanted to attempt some Winstraw, you could do that. The only issue with Winstraw as an older competitor, I could tell you that if your joints hurt, they're going to hurt even worse with Winstraw. Winstraw really dries your joints out. It affects collagen synthesis, synovial fluid production. It dries you out just really bad, and everything just feels brittle. My muscles felt like beef jerky when I was running Winstraw. It looked good, but that's why I saved it for the last 10 days. I just ran it hard the last 10 days. I pulled my training back. That's it. But really, if you just want it to feel good, look good, you didn't think you had a first place trophy on the line, I would just play it safe. Test, Primo, Masteron, growth hormone. You don't need anything else other than the Primo or Masteron, or you could run a combination of both. People ask me all the time why I run both. It's really, for me, I found that works best. This is just my bro logic in my head. I really don't have a lot of science to back this up, but there is some evidence that Primo, the metabolite of Primobolan, I can't remember the name of it specifically, that acts as a suicide aromatase inhibitor, and Masteron acts more like a SERM, selective estrogen receptor modulator. Also, Masteron seems to dry you out a bit more. Masteron helps with mood. Primobolan seems to keep you a bit fuller. It seems to be a bit more anabolic. So I like running them side by side for me. But if you just wanted to run Masteron or Primobolan, one or the other, you'd be just fine. I think the differences you're going to see are subtle. I have a preference for Primo if I had to pick one or the other. But save the bank. If you don't break the bank, save the money if you are on a budget, and just save that money for a little more GH and just run Masteron if you're on contest prep. I would rather devote that budget to GH. But anyway, that is sort of my old guy master's prep cycle advice. Keep the doses moderate. Make sure you feel good. Listen to your body. Listen to the feedback your body's giving you. Look at your blood panel, see how that is affecting things, and just stick with the basic, safe stuff. You'll be thankful for it at the end, and you'll look better on stage. All right, next question I have here is from Austin Dillard. Austin asks, have you heard of being able to reverse the slowing of gastric emptying caused by Ozempic? If so, what might be the protocol? Asking for a 50-year-old diabetic woman. I'm assuming if she's diabetic that she is on Ozempic permanently. I have noticed that the gastric emptying effects don't seem to be as bad with retatrutide. Just throwing that out there. I know it's not FDA approved currently, but it's just something she may want to talk with her doctor about. Really, the only way to get the gastric emptying increased would be to maybe lower the dose or come off of it, which I wouldn't advise if she is diabetic. It might be necessary for her treatment to stay on it as a diabetic, so that's something she needs to discuss with her doctor. Gastroparesis is a potential side effect of Ozempic. It seems that Ozempic is the worst with it, from what I understand. There are some things you could do to help. Eating easy to digest meals might be something you could do. Potentially throwing in some digestive enzymes, things like ginger. There are some medications that do help with it, but I don't know if you'd want to fight one medication with another. I don't know that there's really a solid answer other than just coming off the stuff. If it's causing that much of a problem with her gastric emptying that it's causing upset stomach, other issues, she may want to look at adjusting the dose, talk to her doctor about that, or potentially coming off of it. Taking a look at her food choices, a low FODMAP diet may help with digestion, would prevent some of the gas, bloating, other issues that come along with it. That may get things moving again. Fiber intake may potentially help with this. Sometimes fiber is a double-edged sword, though. If you have stomach issues, it can make things worse. If you do have slow gastric intake, sometimes fiber can actually make things worse. So just something to be mindful of. I would take a strong look at the food choices. Simple, easy to digest foods. I would throw in maybe some supplements that could help with digestion, speeding up digestion, digestive enzymes, maybe some ox bile, potentially some ginger, things like that that may help with speeding up digestion. And it's really, at the end of the day, it may just come down to the drug just doesn't agree with her. She may need to lower the dose or make a change to something else. All right, next question here is from username. If you could monitor any labs throughout a cycle, which ones would you always include? Say just a test cycle or whatever. I will tell you the stuff that I typically see skewed on blood panels. It is for even on guys that are on TRT, all the way up to dudes that are blasting grams of test. There's a couple things that are always going to be a little off. Almost always you're going to see an elevation in hemoglobin, hematocrit, and red blood cell count. That is just the cost of doing business. Doctors seem to freak out about it. They don't understand how testosterone raises EPO. What's wild with it is that it seems whether you are on 100 milligrams of test or on 1,000 milligrams of test, that the hemoglobin hematocrit elevation always seems to be similar with everybody. It's always like, hemoglobin is always somewhere like, 17.5 to 17.8, somewhere in that range. And you'll see guys be like 52, 53 hematocrit. That is typical. Red blood cells, 5 point whatever. That's usually what you see on just pretty much everybody that's running testosterone. That's what you see. Now, when I get concerned is when I see hematocrit get above 55, when your hemoglobin is getting above 18, then you might need to take some corrective action. Other things that I see on blood panels that are typically skewed, AST and ALT are always a little elevated with dudes that are working out and taking TRT. It just happens. Small elevation I wouldn't worry about. Now, if you're up in the hundreds, then you got something going on. But, like if it's, 5, 10, 15 points elevated, I wouldn't worry about it. Doctors freak out about it. It's just the breakdown of the aminotransferase enzymes from working out. It's just waste product from working out. It's not actual liver stress. When you do a liver ultrasound, everything looks fine, typically. Other things that I would keep an eye on, definitely lipids. Lipids can get skewed running PEDs, even TRT. You'll see some suppression of HDL, elevation of LDL. That's pretty typical. Other things that you'll see is elevation of creatinine. A small elevation of creatinine I wouldn't worry about, but if it starts getting up like 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, then you got a problem. You got to pay attention to your kidney health. But sometimes just creatine will throw off creatinine numbers. Taking creatine will throw off creatinine numbers. You'll see elevations in blood urea nitrogen if you're eating a high protein diet. Just a slight elevation in BUN. That's just from eating more protein. Just happens. Those are typically the things that I always see elevated. Now, stuff that we start to get a little worried about, if HDL is really smashed, like if it's below 30, if LDL is getting up around 130, 140, 150, we got to take a look at some things. Other weird things that sometimes you'll see that get out of alignment. Sometimes you'll see some of the immune system markers Platelet counts, like that's a red flag. If you see high platelet counts and you have elevated hemoglobin and hematocrit, then that could be a real problem. Could end up throwing a blood clot. So you want to pay attention to that. I mean, generally for blood work, what I recommend is just getting a comprehensive metabolic panel, liver panel, checking your thyroid, making sure your thyroid's functioning properly. Keeping an eye on lipids. I would add in lipoprotein B, lipo B. That seems to be a better indicator of actual cardiovascular risk. Now that's one I would keep an eye on. For your kidney health, I would probably go with cystatin C rather than the traditional EGFR that they base off of creatinine and BUN, because creatinine and BUN are going to be elevated when you're lifting weights and taking PEDs a little bit, and it's going to throw off that EGFR reading when you're not really having kidney issues. But a cystatin C would probably be a better indicator of that. And liver, if your liver is truly stressed out, you'll see rises in bilirubin. You'll see, GGT would be another one you could throw in, but guys are always obsessed about their testosterone levels. Like, I don't even bother checking my testosterone levels unless I'm worried about the gear being fake. Your test levels are going to be high. Another thing that's going to be suppressed all the time is going to be SHBG. I just don't even bother testing it. LH and FSH are always going to be suppressed. That's just normal from being on shit. So I don't even waste my money testing for those. I would get a urinalysis done too to make sure there's no protein in your urine. That could be a real sign of kidney problems. If you see protein in your urine, that's something to keep an eye on. So those are the sort of the basic tests that I like to run: lipo B, lipids, liver, kidney. If you want to throw in some extra stuff, you could get GGT. C-reactive protein could be another one that you could throw in. A1C would be another one. If you're running growth hormone, you should probably have an A1C test thrown in there as well, just to make sure that you're not having an accumulation of insulin resistance. Keep an eye on your A1C levels. And that's pretty much it. I know that's a lot. I will put a link up in the video description below where I'll have my recommended blood panels that I usually have my clients do. If you want to check that out, I'll have a link to an article on what blood panels I typically recommend. All right, next question is from my buddy Ed Petrenko. Any chance you could explain nitrogen retention, how it was born, why does it happen, why is it so important? Is too much bad or good? How to increase or decrease it? The good, the bad, the ugly, the whole enchilada. Please dumb it down for all of us that don't know. Nitrogen retention. You don't really hear guys talk about it that much anymore. We used to talk about it a lot in the early 2000s. Positive nitrogen retention, positive nitrogen balance in the body. All that means is it's just an indicator of muscle protein synthesis or muscle protein loss. That's all we're really talking about. If you're in a negative nitrogen balance, that just means you're losing protein structures. If you're in a positive nitrogen balance, it means you're accumulating protein structure. Nitrogen is the fundamental component of amino acids, so it's a way of measuring amino acids presence. It's the building blocks of protein, essentially. The amounts of nitrogen the body retains reflects how much protein is being synthesized. Anabolism versus catabolism. If you're retaining more nitrogen than you're losing, it means that your body is in an anabolic state. And we know things that you can do to put your body in an anabolic state, such as eating more protein, taking PEDs. PEDs are going to greatly increase nitrogen retention. Being in a caloric surplus is going to help with nitrogen retention, lifting weights, getting adequate rest and recovery. All these things are going to help with positive nitrogen retention. Now, what can cause nitrogen loss? Catabolism, not eating enough protein, being in too big of a calorie deficit, overtraining. There's certain drugs, cortisol, could cause that. We also want to make sure that we're not in a state of breaking down muscle protein structures for glucose. An example would be gluconeogenesis, where the body is in a completely glucose-deprived state and starts breaking down protein structures to make its own glucose. That's a video I put up the other week. It gets all the keto and carnivore bros to get their panties up in a wad. But if you're in a very, very catabolic state, your body does need some glucose, carbohydrates, whatever the fuck you want to call it, to help with brain function, kidney function, central nervous system. Your body does still need, even though bros like to say that, the keto bros like to say that glucose isn't essential, you still need some so your fucking brain works. Your brain can run on some ketones up to like something like 60%. I don't want to go down this rant again. You can watch the video if you want to get all that. But that would be a situation where if you're breaking down protein structures for glucose, you could potentially be in a negative nitrogen balance and be catabolic where you're losing muscle. So to wrap it all up, positive nitrogen balance, negative nitrogen balance, it's just an indication of being in an anabolic state or being in a catabolic state of either breaking down or accumulating protein structures. Really, that simple. All right, next question I got here is from username. The 15% body fat before starting gear rule. Is that just a convention in an effort to minimize aromatization? If estrogen's under control, what is the harm of having a higher body fat percentage? I mean, that's part of the equation. There's, you could look it up. People debate it, but there's a thing called the P ratio, where basically the fatter you get, the more weight that you gain. That disproportionately is a rate. That ratio of weight gain is fat, not actual protein structures. Otherwise, morbidly obese people would be jacked, and they're not. They tend to have less muscle a lot of times than people that are healthy. So there is not a really, that's the thing why you got to be careful with getting too carried away with a caloric surplus. It also depends on where your calories are coming from, how those macronutrients are distributed, partitioned, whatever you want to call it. Fats are going to be partitioned different than proteins, and glucose is going to be, carbohydrates is going to be partitioned differently than those two. Glucose could be either used for glycogen, burned, or potentially converted to lipids and stored as fat. Fats typically are either burned or used for cellular repair, some essential things like cellular repair, vitamin transport, but for the most part, fats are just energy. Outside of some essential fatty acids, they do some other things in there, but fats are very complex. And proteins are typically used for protein structure repair, cellular repair, growth. They can also be converted into glucose. It's very unlikely that protein's going to be stored as fat, but there's a million different things that can go on here. So what happens when your body fat gets too high? The higher it gets, the harder it's going to be to diet down. And the harder you have to diet down, the more chance that you're going to probably lose some muscle tissue as you diet down. So for example, if a competitive bodybuilder, somebody like me, operates somewhere between the 5% body fat range at the low end and at 15% on the high end, if I have to go on a contest prep, let's say at 200 and, let's just use some even math. Let's just say I'm a 200-pound bodybuilder and I need to lose 10% body fat to be in show shape. That's 20 pounds of fat I've got to lose in a 16-week contest prep. That's 1.5 pounds a week, somewhere in that ballpark. We're talking about something like a 750 calorie a day deficit ballpark that I have to be in. If I let myself get up to 25% body fat and have to lose even more, let's say I have to lose 4 pounds a week, Just throwing arbitrary numbers out there. Let's say I have 20% body fat I need to drop to get down to, or 15% body fat. Let's say I'm at 20% body fat, or 25. We'll go with 20. Say I need to lose 15% body fat at 200 pounds to get down to contest shape. We're talking about 30 pounds of fat I need to burn in a 16-week contest prep. That's an additional 500 calories per day. The deeper the deficit is, my math may be a little bit off there, but anyway, the moral of the story is here, the deeper the deficit, the harder the contest prep is going to be, and the bigger the risk of losing muscle is going to be. So it really does not behoove you to push your body fat percentage up even higher. And in fact, if you get super, super lean, you'll find that if you just get yourself just exotically peeled one fucking time, that it becomes way easier to stay in that range. You have a huge runway. Like if I'm at 5% body fat and I want to go into an off season, I have 10% of body fat to play with. And I'm still relatively lean at 15% body fat. Whereas if I let myself get obese up to say 25%, I don't have that big of a runway, man. I'm going to look like shit. I'm going to feel like shit. And I'm going to have to lose a shit ton more when I come into contest prep. It just makes everything way harder. There really is just no benefit to it unless you're some sort of strength athlete or you're a football player where you need that extra mass just to move people, things like that. But I wouldn't advise it, man. I think especially if you're a bodybuilder, it makes zero sense. All right, last question we have here is from Alexander Alfonso. Alexander asks, how should I structure my carb intake on prep when using 2 units of GH pre-workout and 2 units pre-fasted cardio? Split to stimulate lipolysis twice? I think that's a question. Should I split it to stimulate lipolysis twice? Should I use insulin with it? Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. The way I typically do it on contest prep is I will take a GH injection at night. I will take a GH injection again in the morning. When I have my carbs, the way I structure my carbs a lot of times on contest prep with my clients, eventually, not right out of the gate, I will yank carbs from the first 4 meals of the day. I typically work out at night, so I take my GH in the morning, and then I have no carbs throughout the day, and then I hit the gym later in the evening. I have carbs pre-workout, intra-workout, post-workout, no GH administered during that time. Then I'll have a bit of time, I fast before I go to bed, a couple of hours to let those carbs clear and absorb, and then I'll take another shot of GH before bed. Now keep in mind, with growth hormone, it takes about 1 to 2 hours for it to peak from a subcutaneous injection. I have heard the argument made that if you inject it subcutaneously, that you can hit that peak faster. There could be potential problems with that. I've also heard from various people that GH is a very fragile peptide, and injecting intramuscular can cause some of the peptide to be degraded, and you don't actually get full absorption of that peptide. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but that sort of makes some logical sense to me. The drug was designed to be administered subcutaneously, so let's just stick with the way it was meant to be used, subcutaneously. If we do, with that assumption, we know that it's going to take 1 to 2 hours for it to peak. Lipolysis is going to last, peak lipolysis is going to last something like 6 to 8 hours after. Now, there are some extended effects of lipolysis that happen beyond that 6 to 8 hour time frame. You have effects like hormone-sensitive lipase signaling through the JAK2 STAT pathway that can last for days after you take the GH. So you have that going on as well. And keep in mind, when you do your fasted cardio in the morning, it's probably the GH injection that you did before bed that's going to be giving you the most benefit. You're not going to get up 2 hours before you do your fasted cardio to wait for the GH to peak. so you have it in your system. Now, if you wanted to experiment with the subcutaneous injection, I guess that is a possibility. I wouldn't risk ruining or affecting the absorption rate of my expensive GH. I know some others do it. That's fine. We're delving into the territory of bro science here, but if you look at the way that the drug is administered through a clinical setting, it is subcutaneously all before bed. Now keep in mind that some of the downstream effects of GH, like IGF-1 production, increased IGF-1 production, that can last for days after your GH injection. So there's a cascade of hormonal effects that happen from taking the growth hormone. What I do, and I think makes the most sense, is just to take it pre-bed, take it in the morning, on contest prep, break it up into 2 doses. In the off season, take it all before bed. I don't like to have it around my high carbohydrate meals, which are going to be during the day. I also find that if I take it in the morning during the off season, then I get tired. I think that makes the most sense to keep it away from your high carbohydrate meals. Wait a couple hours after you get your last carbohydrate meal in the off season, then take it all before bed subcutaneously and let it do its thing. I also find when I do a single dose in the off season that it keeps my blood sugar levels lower. It also prevents the lethargy, and there could be an argument made that you would get a higher IGF-1 spike from taking a single bolus dose. But, once again, a lot of this is just anecdote. All right, folks, that's all I've got for you on this one. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you have comments, questions, you just want to tell me I'm stupid, you think I'm the greatest thing since sliced bread, let me know in the comment section below. I appreciate each and every one of you. Take care, and I'll see you on the next episode.
For coaching or consultations, head over to www.anabolicbodybuilding.com to book your spot today. I can help you with optimizing hormones, fat loss, muscle gain, physique, athletic performance, nutrition, and health. For more information, shoot me an email at bigp3rd@gmail.com.